What would you do if a billionaire stranger collapsed at your feet in a thunderstorm, offered you $500 and begged, "Pretend you're the love of my life for exactly 5 minutes"? Grace Walker only needed a heartbeat to decide. But that single heartbeat hurled her from her humble fruit stand in Union Square into the glittering jaws of Manhattan's elite. One moment she was shielding crates of oranges from the rain. The next she was shaking hands with a mogul who planned to announce her as his son's future bride in front of 100 ruthless socialites. Trapped between a desperate heir, a vengeful heiress, and a secret that could crush her sister's medical dreams, Grace discovers that even the smallest lie can turn into the biggest storm. Will 5 borrowed minutes spark a lifetime of opportunity or ignite a scandal powerful enough to burn 2 worlds to ash? Keep watching to see loyalty tested, fortunes threatened, and love fighting for a chance to bloom where no one ever thought it could. The rain hit Union Square like a monsoon that forgot it wasn't invited. Grace Walker was too busy tugging down the plastic tarp over her fruit stand to care. She had survived worse storms, both on the street and in life. Her hands were stained with citrus and soil, her hair sticking to her cheeks. But the only thing that mattered was keeping her oranges dry and her accounts above zero. She had bills to pay, and Mia, her little sister, needed medical textbooks that cost more than her rent. Then came the man in the tailored navy suit, stumbling through the market like he'd wandered into the wrong reality show. His hair was soaked, his leather shoes ruined, but it wasn't the rain that made him look desperate. It was his eyes, wild, frantic, like someone standing on the edge of a cliff. "Please," he said out of breath, kneeling right there on the pavement in front of her stand. "I just need 5 minutes. Pretend to be my girlfriend. I'll pay you whatever you want." Grace blinked, backing into her crate of grapefruits. "Are you out of your mind?" "I might be," he admitted, shivering as water dripped from his chin. "But I need this. Tonight. Right now." "You're serious?" He opened a small box, not with a ring, but with a pin bearing the Preston Hotel's logo. "My family thinks I'm bringing someone to dinner. They expect an engagement with someone I don't love. But if I show up with someone else, even just for 5 minutes, it buys me time. They'll back off." "Why me?" she asked, crossing her arms, wet sleeves clinging to her skin. "Because you're not part of their world, which makes this believable. My name is Ethan Preston." The name slapped her like a cold wind. The Prestons were royalty in the hotel industry. She'd seen their name on buildings, tabloids, even charity galas she only glimpsed through cracked TV screens. "And I'm supposed to just say yes to this soap opera stunt?" Grace asked, half laughing, half stunned. "I'll give you $500 for 5 minutes, no strings. You walk in, smile, pretend, and leave. 500. Grace felt her breath catch. That was nearly 2 months of produce, a whole semester's worth of books for Mia. But then she remembered the sharp stares she'd always felt from people in his kind of world. She stood straighter. "Fine," she said slowly. "But if your family humiliates me or treats me like trash, I walk out. I don't care if it's mid-toast or mid-lie." Ethan smiled for the first time. "Deal." As they walked through the misty street toward the black SUV waiting by the curb, Grace's heart pounded. She had no idea that within the hour she'd be standing in the marble foyer of one of the most powerful families in Manhattan, nor that what began as a lie would pull her into something much deeper than she ever expected. Ethan's hand hovered awkwardly near hers as they approached the mansion. "Know the castle on the Upper East Side?" Valets lined the circular driveway. The lawn was filled with European cars and umbrellas in every designer pattern imaginable. "This doesn't look like a small family dinner," Grace muttered. Ethan swallowed hard. "My mother tends to overdo it." The moment they stepped inside, Grace felt the heat of judgment. Chandeliers larger than her apartment sparkled above. Music echoed softly from a grand piano somewhere out of sight. And then she saw her, Elaine Preston, tall, impeccable, surgical smile sharp. "Santiago, darling." Elaine's eyes slid to Grace. "And you must be Grace." Grace extended her hand with every ounce of composure she had. "It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Preston." "Oh, call me Elaine," the woman said with a curious smile. "You're very natural. I see the appeal." Before Grace could respond, a man entered, older, commanding, with the posture of a general and the calm of a storm just before it breaks. "Dad," Ethan said quietly. This is Grace. Robert Preston's gaze was piercing, but not unkind. He studied Grace like he was reading a contract. "So you're the woman who's stolen my son's attention," he said finally. "Tell me, Grace, what do you do?" Grace glanced sideways at Ethan, then straightened her back. "I sell fruit at Union Square Market, sir. Oranges mostly. Mangoes, papayas when I can find them fresh. My customers come to me because they know I don't sell anything I wouldn't eat myself." Silence. For 3 seconds, no one spoke. Then Robert let out a short laugh. "Honest work. I like that. Hard to find these days." Elaine raised a brow, surprised. Grace let out the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "She supports her younger sister," Ethan added. "Mia. She's studying to become a doctor." Elaine's expression softened. "A doctor? That's wonderful." For a moment, Grace almost forgot she was lying. Then the air changed. A slow voice, cool as glass, cut through the conversation. "Grace, what an unexpected pleasure." Grace turned. A woman in a black silk gown glided toward them, like a shadow with perfect posture. Her hair gleamed like a raven's wing. Her eyes, however, were pure frost. Victoria Sterling, the woman Ethan was supposed to marry. Ethan stepped forward instinctively, shielding Grace. "Victoria, you weren't supposed to be here." "Your mother invited me," she said sweetly, standing just a little too close. "I thought tonight was for important announcements." Ethan stiffened. "Victoria, this is my girlfriend, Grace Walker." Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. How quaint. How temporary. "Victoria, I just hope Grace understands what she's getting into," Victoria added, lowering her voice. "This world doesn't take kindly to outsiders." Before Ethan could respond, Robert Preston raised his champagne glass. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "tonight we toast to something rare sincerity. My son has finally brought home the woman who captured his heart. And in 2 weeks at our annual gala at the Plaza, Grace Walker will be introduced as his future bride." The room erupted in applause. Grace froze. Her mouth opened, then closed. She stared at Ethan. He looked just as shocked. "You said 5 minutes," she whispered. "I know," he murmured, squeezing her hand. "But now, I need something more." The applause faded, but her heart didn't. She was already too deep. And yet something inside her whispered, this was only the beginning. "We hate to interrupt such an intense moment, but we'd love to hear from you. Do you think Grace should have walked away right then and there? Yes or no? And do you believe Ethan is genuinely falling for her, or just using her to escape an arranged life? If you're feeling the emotions building up, please give this story a like and drop a heart to support it. Your feedback means the world. Right now, Grace stood frozen in the middle of the ballroom, applause still ringing in her ears like a cruel joke. 2 weeks, gala fiancé. None of that had been in the deal. She'd signed up for 5 minutes, not 5 headlines. Ethan's hand was still wrapped around hers, but his expression was rattled, caught between guilt and something else. Something that looked far too close to hope. She leaned in, voice barely above a whisper. "This wasn't part of the deal." "I didn't plan that," Ethan said. "I swear. My father," he took it upon himself. "I'll fix it." But Grace wasn't sure this could be fixed. She was already drowning in a lie that had grown legs and marched into one of the most powerful rooms in New York. Back at her tiny apartment that night, Grace sat in silence at the edge of the bed, the smell of citrus still clinging to her fingertips. Across the room, Mia was flipping through flashcards for her pathology exam, unaware of the storm that had begun to brew around them. "You okay?" Mia asked without looking up. Grace smiled tightly. "Yeah, just tired." But tired didn't explain the ache in her chest or the lingering weight of Ethan's hand in hers, or the sound of Victoria Sterling's voice replaying in her head like a warning bell. Over the next week, Grace became a woman caught between two worlds. By day, she still sold fruit at Union Square, stacking mangoes, slicing oranges, checking invoices. But by night, she was whisked into Ethan's world etiquette lessons, ballroom dance classes, with a sharply dressed instructor named Mr. Collins, and fittings for gowns she couldn't pronounce, let alone afford. It was all a blur: silk perfume, crystal chandeliers. And Ethan always nearby, watching her like he was trying to memorize something that might disappear. One evening after dance class, Grace tripped over her own feet for the 5th time. "I can't do this," she muttered, pulling away from Ethan's grasp. "I'm a vendor, not a Vanderbilt." "You're Grace," Ethan said quietly. "That's enough." His voice was so calm, so certain it shook something loose inside her. And when he held out his hand again, she took it. Not for the gala, for him. That night, she invited him to dinner at her apartment. Ethan had dined at Michelin-starred restaurants on 6 continents, but nothing had prepared him for Grace's 1-bedroom flat above a laundromat where the scent of cumin and lime filled the air and laughter came easy. Mia eyed him skeptically. "So you're the rich boyfriend?" Ethan grinned. "I guess I am. You don't look so dangerous." Grace nearly choked on her rice. Mia shrugged. "I'm just saying, if he breaks your heart, I'm pre-med. I know exactly where all the arteries are." They all laughed, but under the laughter was something warmer, truer. And by the end of the night, Ethan found himself helping wash dishes in a kitchen barely bigger than his walk-in closet and realizing he didn't want to leave. But across town in a penthouse wrapped in marble and malice, Victoria Sterling was plotting. She'd hired a private investigator, not because she cared that Ethan was seeing someone, but because she hated losing, especially to someone like Grace. And the investigator delivered photos, reports, a transcript of the exact moment Ethan had paid Grace to play pretend. Victoria's lips curled. She didn't even need to fabricate anything. The truth was messy enough. 2 days later, as Grace was closing up her stand, Victoria appeared. Black heels, red lipstick, cold smile. A fox in a field of farmers. "We need to talk," she said. "I don't think we do." Victoria dropped a folder onto the wooden crates. Inside, photographs of Grace and Ethan under the rain, the cash exchanging hands, the late-night lessons. Evidence of everything. Grace's blood ran cold. "You've been spying on me. I'm protecting what's mine," Victoria replied smoothly. "Ethan and I were raised for this world. You're just a charming little detour. You don't get to decide that." "Oh, but I do," Victoria leaned in. "Unless you want the IRS, the health inspector, and the New York Times to learn how this relationship started, you'll walk away, tonight." Grace's fingers trembled as she closed the folder. Her mouth felt dry. She thought of her sister's tuition, of the women in the market who relied on her for pricing advice, of Mrs. Olson's back injury last week, how one inspection could shut it all down. She had no power here. Not in this world. That night when Ethan arrived to take her to dinner, Grace was sitting on the couch, hands clasped, eyes distant. "Everything okay?" he asked, sitting beside her. "We need to talk," she said. Something in her voice made him go still. "I think we've taken this too far," Grace whispered. "You and we're from different worlds. I don't belong in yours." Ethan reached for her hand, but she pulled it away. "Grace, what is this? Where's this coming from? Reality," she said bitterly. "This was never real." "That's not true." But she was already standing, putting walls back up where there had once been cracks of light. "I'm sorry," she said. "Thank you for everything. But it's over." She didn't wait for his response. She couldn't bear to see his face when she lied. She just needed him to believe it. After he left, the silence in the apartment was unbearable. Mia came out, her textbook in hand, but her eyes wide with worry. "What happened? I ended it. But why you two were... I had to." Grace stared at the window. It was the only way to protect everything else. Outside, the rain returned. Fitting. That was how it all began. That's how it would end. We hate to pause right here, but we'd love to hear from you before we dive into the next storm. Do you think Grace made the right choice by walking away? And should she have told Ethan the truth about Victoria's threats? If this part hit you in the heart, please drop a like and share some love with a heart. Your support helps us bring more stories like this to life. Right now, the rain returned the night of the Preston Foundation Gala, rattling against the windows of the plaza like a warning drum. Inside the gilded ballroom, chandeliers glittered over gowns and tuxedos, but Ethan Preston felt hollow beneath his bow tie. 3 days had passed since Grace ended things, yet every breath still tasted of citrus and regret. Tonight, he was expected to stand beside Victoria Sterling and announce an engagement he'd never truly accepted. His father's speech cards waited in his jacket pocket, heavy as iron. Victoria, radiant in silver silk, linked her arm through Ethan's and whispered, "Smile." A Preston never shows doubt. Ethan managed a polite curve of his lips, but his eyes drifted to the entrance, half hoping Grace would walk in and shatter the charade. As the orchestra swelled, Robert Preston ascended the dais. "Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for joining us." His polished tone filled the room, yet Ethan heard nothing until a hush rippled across the crowd. A young woman in a thrift store dress pushed past startled socialites, rainwater streaking her cheeks. Mia Walker's voice rang clear. "I need to speak to Ethan Preston. Now!" Ethan's heart slammed. "Mia," he stepped off the platform, meeting her halfway. "What's wrong? It's about Grace," Mia said, breathless. "She didn't leave because she wanted to. Victoria threatened to destroy our livelihood if Grace stayed with you." A collective gasp swept the ballroom. All eyes darted to Victoria, whose practiced smile faltered. Robert narrowed his gaze. "Is this true?" Victoria lifted her chin. "I did what was necessary. She was never one of us." Silence sharpened into something dangerous. Robert spoke with steel. "Security, please escort Miss Sterling from the premises." Murmurs turned to astonished whispers as guards ushered Victoria toward the exit. She shot Ethan a look, half plea, half warning, but he never glanced back. Robert faced Mia. "Your sister's permits were updated last week. I personally insured it. She belongs wherever she chooses." Then he turned to Ethan, voice low. "Son, if there's someone you want beside you tonight, go." Ethan didn't hesitate. He tossed the speech cards onto a champagne tray, ripped off his tie, and dashed through the hotel's revolving doors into the storm. Lightning carved the sky as he sprinted across Midtown, hailed a cab, then abandoned it near Union Square when traffic snarled. Water soaked through his patent leather shoes, but he kept running until the familiar market stalls emerged like ghosts in the downpour. Grace was closing the tarp over her stand, shoulders hunched when Ethan skidded to a stop. "Grace." She spun, eyes wide. "Ethan, you'll ruin your suit." "I ruined everything the moment I let you walk away." He stepped closer, rain dripping from his hair. "You sacrificed us to protect what matters to you. Let me protect it too." He dropped to one knee in a puddle, pulling out a simple gold band, engraved with the words, "Forever No Lies." "Grace Walker, marry me not for 5 minutes, not for 5 headlines, but for every ordinary day neither of us thought we deserved." Tears blurred the neon lights behind her. "Ethan, our worlds," he cut in softly. "Our worlds collided the moment you handed me that orange. We build the next one together." He held the ring higher, palms trembling. "Will you?" Grace's answer was a whisper lost to thunder, but the way she pulled him up, kissed him, and let the storm swallow their laughter said everything. They stood forehead to forehead as rain washed the last remnants of pretense down the gutter. Months later, Union Square Green Market looked nothing like the night they met. Overhead strings of Edison bulbs glowed warm against early autumn dusk, and rows of flower-laden crates formed an aisle between produce stalls. Guests in velvet and cashmere sat beside farmers in plaid and boots, sharing cider and stories. Grace, in an ivory dress embroidered with tiny orange blossoms, took Robert Preston's arm. "Ready?" he asked, eyes misting. "More than ever." At the altar, an arch twined with eucalyptus and fairy lights, Ethan waited, tie-swapped for a slim wool vest that matched Grace's down-to-earth elegance. When their hands joined, the chatter hushed. They spoke vows without cue cards, promising to stay honest, even when truth was hard to share burdens, the way they had once shared umbrellas, and to keep a place at their table for anyone who felt out of place. After the kiss, applause roared louder than subway tracks. Mariachi horns gave way to a jazz trio as guests sampled a fusion feast, truffle-infused polenta apple turnovers, and Grace's signature fresh-squeezed orange juice. Robert tapped a glass for attention. "In honor of our new Director of Community Development, Preston Hotels will launch the Walker Initiative, a fund connecting small farms to luxury kitchens." Grace turned 5 minutes into a lifetime of opportunity. "Imagine what we can do together." Grace squeezed Ethan's hand until it hurt in the best way. She saw Mrs. Olson wiping tears, Mia dancing with an intern from Robert's foundation, and even Mr. Collins teaching CEOs to waltz between lettuce bins. As night deepened, Ethan led Grace back to their stall now adorned with white candles. He peeled 2 oranges, handing her one half. Full circle, he murmured. They bit into the fruit, simultaneously sweet juice spilling over their fingers. Grace laughed. Still the best thing on your menu? Not the best, Ethan corrected, brushing a drop from her lip. The beginning. Fireflies flashed above the tents. Violin strings rose in a slow, hopeful melody, carrying their story beyond the market and into hearts that might have needed a reminder. Storms end seeds sprout, and sometimes the lie you never meant to tell becomes the truth. You spend the rest of your life honoring. Did Robert's decision to trust Grace surprise you? Would you attend a wedding held in a farmer's market? What do you think of this story overall? Comment number 3 if you loved it, number 1 if it missed the mark, number 2 if it felt just okay. Tell us which country you're watching from, and don't forget to send a heart and share this video so others can feel the magic too.